His influence can primarily be seen in four areas. Like I've discussed already, the idea of positivism, the eugenics, feminist criminology, and the biological studies of crime. Biological determinism, a la Lombroso, gave way to the version of positivism called the progressive movement, where offenders were looked at not like there's something wrong with them and we can't help them, but more so like they were sick. Now, a very bad influence that Lombroso's work had on the world was dealing with the idea of eugenics. The idea of eugenics is if traits were passed down genetically from parents to children, then you could breed out the bad people from the population. This led to a movement that played a big role in the Nazis' plan to eliminate the undesirables of the world. Lombroso's ideas were to protect society from criminals, not to reduce crime in future generations through selective breeding and the elimination of certain peoples. His influence on female studies was limited, but he was one of the few early criminologists to actually study it. His reliance on stereotypes, though, really didn't work out for him. Lombroso's direct influence and his brand of positivism criminology began to wane in the 1920s and all but disappeared after World War II due to the rise of sociological study of crime and the fact that the eugenics movement had died out. The study more so changed from the individual to the communities and society. Lombroso's name being attached to eugenics all but ruined who he was and what he wrote. Though he did not intend for his work to be used like that, that is what it's identified with even now. Lombroso's influence on biological explanations of criminology was good, but he focused only on the outward characteristics, and due to the new technology, biological study of criminals has advanced very far, but is still tainted by Cesare Lombroso's name. Just the fact that his name was attached to it, it already has a big stigma towards it. Now, I'll speak on one of my last topics, the disapproval and the challenges to Cesare Lombroso's theories. Lombroso's theories were challenged based on the premises of the ambiguity in his definitions and classifications and his non-scientific data collection and analysis. Example being, there were four types of criminals according to Lombroso. We had the born criminal, like we speak about, criminals by passion, so if you caught a lover killing the person that your lover was cheating on you with, insane criminals, and then the occasional criminals, people who steal for hunger and while there might be other problems in their life, they just can't afford food. The occasional criminals were further divided into four more categories, known as the pseudo-criminals, so fake criminals, criminaloids, habitual criminals, constant criminals, and epileptics. Lombroso had too many categories of criminals, making it hard for people to follow, and also made it so his categorical definitions somewhat overlapped. So, kind of difficult there. In his 5 editions of The Criminal Man, though, he never mentioned how many stigma should be attached to offenders to identify them as born criminals versus other types of offenders. Like I said earlier, Lombroso's definition of the born criminal is very vague. He had his own definition, but it can be applied to many different things because we're still arguing on what that definition really is. But the vagueness in his definition of the born criminal probably saved him and the others who study the relationship between physical traits and criminality. You couldn't really disprove him. Even though people scoffed at him, kind of laughed, and didn't really like his ideas, they still didn't reject his thesis that lawbreakers are set apart from law abiders by a distinct set of physical traits. The absence of systematic procedures for gathering and analyzing data was another major problem. His studies were rendered unreplicable, which is a huge problem, like anyone would know. During his research and analysis, he would only pull out bits and pieces of information that he found relevant to his studies, which is a big problem because you need to report all your findings, even if they don't prove your theories to be right. Another big problem was that he failed to use control groups in most research. Not all, but most. And because of this, the comparisons made between criminals and normal people were suspect, because if you don't know what a normal person is, how can you identify what an abnormal person would be? It just doesn't make sense. It seems, though, that during his studies he was very frustrated and angered by his own books that he was writing because they contradicted his own theory on atavism. He saw the flaws in his works, but he didn't want to admit to it. Can't blame someone who basically dedicated most of their life to this for not wanting to admit they were wrong. So, in conclusion, Lombroso helped kickstart a new field of criminology, like I said, known as the criminal anthropology. He started the positive school and a new way of looking at the criminals rather than the crime itself. Lombroso brought to light that philosophers should have little influence on the penal code, but rather science should. You should actually study the human mind, not just theorize about it, observe it, not just make something come out of your head. Lombroso played a great part in influencing the world and bringing to light brand new ideas that nobody ever thought of before. While some of his ideas were misinterpreted, like the Nazis using them to selectively breed, and also America did it in the 1930s, as well as Europe, all of Europe, not just Germany. You can't really help the fact that some of his ideas were used negatively. That's just kind of how the cookie crumbles. So, that was my presentation on Chapter 3. Hope you enjoyed it.